Hey guys, welcome to the Professional Development Podcast. Today is Wednesday, January 26th, and it's actually our first recording of the year. Been a minute, but we're going to talk today about leadership. Leadership.
That's it. Are you going to lead the ship?
That's today? It. I will lead the ship today. Dan's not here.
He's got the food shits.
We got everybody else. Yeah, he's got the food shits. But we do have everybody else. But before that, we should probably catch up because it's been a minute. So what's going on, dudes?
I've been absolutely slammed, as you guys know. Been out of town. Been pursuing a lot of shit. Got too many irons in the fire right now. Finally got my head back above water like yesterday as far as like parts go. Mm-hmm. So happy about that. I'm excited to be back on the pod.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. Bob, what's good, bro?
Well, I was in Nashville in, a couple weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, and I got COVID while I was there, most likely from there, but I also won $12,000 while I was there, so that was pretty fucking cool.
Fuck yeah.
So now I get to take that and
strippers
and cocaine, relapse, no big deal. No, I actually, that'll actually get me more than halfway to my goal, my savings goal to have for my house hack that I'll be starting at the end of this year. So,
dope.
Yeah. And some money set aside for some Dave Matthews shows this summer. So that was sweet.
I literally called Bobby and he was telling me the story. He's like, yeah, dude. He's like, so between what I saved and I've got over half now, so it'll be a pretty easy goal to hit. And I actually put some money aside for Dave Matthews Band concerts. Like, you're the biggest fucking
How'd you win it?
So they had these contests that they were running throughout the end of the year, and they did these reverse drawings. So it was like, they start off giving away like 1,000 and then goes to like 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10. And there were 2 reverse drawings. And I was the only person that was called up for both out of like 700 people.
No, there you go.
So completely lucky, won 2,000 in the first one, 10,000 in the next. So it was a pretty nice little surprise. So even though I got COVID, winning 12 grand was absolutely worth that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, man?
Salil, what's good?
For me, just been busy with work and playing volleyball, but I've been going out, saving up some money for like trips coming up later on, like Florida. There's a guys trip we're doing to New Orleans, so I may have to ask you for some recommendations for restaurants and stuff. But other than that, just went to a onesie bar crawl last night.
I saw you that night.
Yeah. Your reindeer onesie that you were talking about.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
I won really well. I had to. One of my buddies told me to like use this pickup line. I was like, all right, fine.
What was the pickup line?
So I found another reindeer. I was like, yo, want to be my +1 to Noah's Ark?
Jesus Christ.
Did it work?
She laughed, but it didn't work.
It didn't work.
Didn't bring her back.
Yeah.
Sal, the Red Rocket reindeer.
Oh, God.
Nice.
What about you, Matt?
So I've been saying I'm going to start phase 2 since like January 3rd. And now we're in January 26th. So this Monday, I'm officially starting it. No doubt. Monday or Tuesday, we'll see. But next week. And then I've got my Airbnb like up and running. And my mom's a fucking saint. Like, 'cause she's good like at the organization and decoration and like the aesthetics or whatever. So she's been helping me a fuck ton with that. And so like literally put it on the market last Saturday, started getting bookings. And then like this weekend, I have my first.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Nice.
my first guests that are showing up, and it's just like this guy randomly messaged me. So they're staying like Friday, Saturday, but these guys are like, "Hey, we're coming from California. I guess there's like a WWE event."
The Royal Rumble.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, so they're coming from California to stay. Like they're getting in town. Their flight lands 12:30.
So they're
Saturday morning,
be there.
Technically like Friday, Friday night, early Saturday morning, however you want to look at it, and literally like setting down, like crashing, waking up, and then just like going to this thing. I guess probably doing a little partying.
Hell yeah!
And they're
so they're basically saying one day.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they don't have
Paying for
wrestling
two.
matches in your place.
What's that?
Hopefully they don't have wrestling matches in your place.
Yeah, I don't have any like steel chairs or anything. That might.
They might
You got
bring
tables though.
Yeah.
Tables, ladders, and chairs.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
I saw you were trying to put some emojis in your Airbnb listing, and Airbnb wouldn't let you do that. You were trying to push P
I
or
want to
something like
say
that.
my place for sure pushes P in that emoji, and they're like, "You can't put that emoji in there, or we won't list it." I was like, "What the fuck?"
I'm seeing that everywhere now.
Yeah. So
I still don't fully understand it, but it's what the cool hip kids
I
are
was
doing. Is
just
all I
about to
know.
ask you what that.
yeah,
I'm surprised. I figured you would know about that, Sal.
pushing P is
It's
just
a
like
work in progress.
referencing like anything good you're doing,
There
right?
you
Like
go.
that pushes P.
100p.
Yeah,
Sure.
right. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't actually know, but I know it's a good thing.
Yeah.
If you're not you definitely don't want to not be pushing P.
If you're not, you're fucking up.
Yeah, you're fucking up big time. So I've
Good to
got
know.
that, and then the whole supply chain deal is fun. I'm sleeping on a mattress on the ground right now, which is good. But everything is supposed to come. Like I'd say, all my electronics and shit, and then half my furniture comes this Friday. So I'll have majority of my house set up by then.
So you have your original place that you got is what you're Airbnb-ing out, or
Mhm.
your brand new place is what you're Airbnb.
The bottom half of the duplex is what I'm Airbnb-ing out.
Got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
living at this place, and then it's got like an unfinished basement, but it's a brand new build, so it's those concrete, like it's got 10-foot ceilings, it's huge. So I'm gonna spray paint the walls black there, and then probably stain the concrete and make like a pretty decent sized finished basement,
Nice.
and then yeah, we'll see what I do with that. But I'll eventually Airbnb that too if things keep going like this with Airbnb, because you can make so much more money off of that. Yeah. So like just for comparison, it's like for a buddy of mine that I was talking to, it's like for a place he could rent for $1,000 a month, like for a long-term tenant, it's like minimum you'll make $1,500 off of Airbnb profit. That's after you're like paying electricity, paying all that. He's like, but realistically, it's like you can make easily $2,500 a month off that.
Can't beat that.
No.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Unless another pandemic hits. So, but yeah, that's all I got. Dan's not here. So you guys got anything else before we hop into it?
No.
Cool. So today's topic again is going to be leadership. Let's start with quotes. What do we got?
I'll go. So I have, this one is from Adrian Gostick. He is the author of The Carrot Principle. And he said, people may forget what you said or even what you did, but they never forget the way you made them feel. So especially with something like leadership, I think a lot of people see it as a position rather than like a responsibility. So that's something that just really stuck out to me in one of my favorite books on leadership.
What's the book again?
The Carrot Principle.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you've been talking about that since like day one of the podcast.
I think I talked about that, very early on, one of our first episodes that I was on.
Yep. Cool. What do you got?
So the one I got is leaders must be close enough to relate to others, but far enough ahead to motivate them. And that's by John Maxwell, who's like kind of like a leadership guru, I feel like. So I like that one because I feel it kind of closely relates to what I have going on with my business and probably Matt and Dan's, where it's a smaller amount of employees. So it's like, you want to have like a friendship with them and create a good culture, but you also have to be like not in the same position as them. Like you need to be thinking ahead.
Yep.
So, because I feel like there's been times where I've lacked that even.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So mine's a Steve Jobs quote. It's, my job is not to be easy on people. My job is to make them better. I like this a lot. And like, by no means am like, as like a boss or whatever, am I like a hard ass or am I like ridiculously tough on my employees? But it's like, at the end of the day, it's like I set out goals, like we set out goals or whatever. And it's like my job as a leader is to get them there.
Yeah.
And it's not to just like let them go at every angle. It's like sometimes you got to really push people and sometimes you got to, be, I don't want to say you have to be a dick. It just depends on the individual, but it's like sometimes you just obviously you can't fucking coddle them. You know what I mean? It's like the goal is to get them to the goal, not to just make them happy all the time.
Yeah. If they're comfortable, they're not trying hard enough.
Yep.
For me, I see this quote as the key to successful leadership is influence, not authority. For me, I see it as like you lead by example and like you show action. You don't like kind of push what you believe in. You kind of like lead them and then show like you got to make them inspired to like follow you in their footsteps or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, I like that a lot. So do you guys have any books that you've read, any podcasts, any blogs, anything in particular on leadership that you've read or listened to that you would suggest?
In addition to the care principle that I mentioned with my quote, there's a podcast that I listened to over the last couple months by the Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast. If you've ever listened to that before, and this is something that we can put in the show notes. But the name of the episode is "Strengthening a Struggling Team," and that one talks a lot about the hard conversations that you need to have with your team as you're trying to grow an organization. And it's about having those confrontational, like you said, like having those tough conversations with people versus just like, are you going to be everyone's friend? Most likely, but first and foremost, like you are there to help them be better at their business and help them either create wealth or hit whatever goal that you have as a business owner. So friendship should come second in everything. So that was a big thing a podcast that I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go with like probably one of the most obvious ones in the world for leadership, and that's Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I read that one during 75 Hard, and it's probably like top 5 favorite books that I've read. And I think the reason I liked it so much is because he tells a real life story, an example of something he went through in Iraq, and then applies it in a business situation with application for you. So it kind of like, oh, this dude got his like arm shot off, and Jocko took full responsibility for it as the leader of it.
Yep.
So it's like as far away possible on like the level of like realism versus like, did you get your paperwork done today? So it's like, to me, it was like kind of like makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. So with that, I read that book a long time ago, and to the point where it's like I probably don't even remember a lot of it, and I was probably just trying to buzz through it. But there were a lot of good principles in there, and a lot of it references Jocko's TED Talk.
Yeah.
So if you look up Jocko Willink and you just want to see a TED Talk that kind of embodies like how it is for Navy SEALs, it's like take a look at that, and like the gist of it is like there was friendly fire.
Yep.
And then like people got shot, people like Afghans got killed that were like allies, and basically they were all sitting in a room, and he was like, whose fault is this? And like one person would raise their hand, the other person would raise their hand, and he'd be like, not you, not you, not you. It's me.
Yeah, exactly.
And he took ownership, but every single person in that room felt like basically it was their fault, or like they could take ownership, or they could have done something to prevent it. And the whole idea is like if you do that to the extreme point, right, where nobody would ever take like ownership or take the blame for these things, it forces you to think about how you can fix it.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, that TED Talk, I actually listened to it today. It's like 13 minutes long. It's super short. And it's like ranked as like one of like the top 5 leadership talks in history. Like it's that good of an episode to listen to. So
Right. Yep. Yeah. Again, take a look at that TED Talk for sure. If you're at all on the fence at all about reading that book, that's something I need to do. And honestly, like I don't have much because I haven't read that, but now that I'm more in a like my main role is a leadership, that's going to be a goal of mine this year for sure. So my question then kind of leading into this is what is the difference between a boss and a leader? And whenever you think of this, it's like I literally have the image pulled up. You think of like the soldiers or whatever, and you see the boss, and it's like the boss is on like a throne, like telling them where to go. He's behind them. They're all pulling the boss, and the leader's like, okay, leader's right out there in front, leading the way for that. But obviously a little bit of a cliche, but with every cliche comes a little bit of truth. So what do you guys think is the difference between a boss and a leader?
I had that same thing written down. Leaders lead from the front, and I wrote they don't sit behind a desk and crack the whip.
Yeah.
It's literally exactly what I wrote. To me, I mean, leadership is a lot of times, especially with what I do, people see it as like a title, right? Like, oh, you're in charge of these people, you oversee these folks, where leadership is not so much a position as it is an action. You can be a leader from day one in an organization. It doesn't require you to receive a promotion or a raise or anything like that. So I think that's where you see a big difference in a boss versus a leader, someone who actually cares about other people's success versus they can probably go about doing their own thing and collect a paycheck. Like we were kind of talking about like a managerial type position versus a leader. So that's the biggest, I don't know, I see that being the biggest difference between a leader and a boss.
For sure.
So I think I might push back slightly. So for me, I do think a leader should almost sit back. Like their job is to, point the ship in the direction it needs to go. and then he sends it to a boss to have that executed. So he's the one that's deciding where are we headed with this organization or business or just your personal development. So then obviously a leader can't go and execute the same jobs that a boss does, because if he's doing that, he can't focus on actually moving the ball down the road. So
wait, so are you saying that there's both a boss and a leader in an
that's
organization?
what I think. I think for an organization to be super successful, you have to have a leader, and like to me, I'll call a boss like a manager in that situation. There's a lot of people out there that are really, really good managers, but if you give them a position of leadership, they'll never ever execute because they were really good at what they did. They weren't good at seeing to the future and moving forward.
Got
Where
it.
a leader, I feel like he can sit back like a Steve Jobs. Like he was seeing things that were happening way ahead of time. He wasn't sitting and developing the iPhone. He put somebody in place who was very, very good at what they did to figure out how to make that product that he had a vision for.
Yeah.
So I think that's like, for me, I mean, slight pushback, maybe not really,
Yeah.
but I just think that there's a place for both of them. And I think that there's people who are really, really good bosses, but they cannot lead an organization.
I think of and to your point too, like that makes total sense because I think of someone like Dan who's like this visionary, right? Like Dan has all these ideas, knows where he wants to go, and then I'm sure it's the same way for like all of you guys, where it's like, all right, here's my idea, here's how it needs to be executed. I'm not going to be the one to execute this. I need the key players that can put this into motion.
Yeah. So I see what you're saying, Brad, and I think like in a lot of these, in terms of like a leader, I think it's just like a lot of these are talking about just like whether you're leading an organization or you're leading a team,
Yeah.
right? It's just a style. It's a style preference. So I actually had what Sal had written down, which is boss is authority, leader is influence, right? It makes sense, right? There's a lot of people that it's like, okay, do this, do this.
Well, like a perfect example of that would be like in the sports. Like you have a head coach. You have a head coach that like directs the plays, but then you have like the quarterback that leads and execute those plays because the coach can't be there.
Yeah.
So there has to work like cohesively.
Yeah, and there's a difference between using your influence and using authority. Again, if you're just like telling people constantly what to do and just like giving them straight directions, that can obviously be effective. But like getting them bought in on it, like, actually understanding, like getting them behind the why, like how we're in this together, understanding like as a leader, like I have your back, stuff like that. To me, that's more influence, right? And it's like it's getting people to want to do the things as opposed to making people do those things.
So like a real life example, just last week, it was like our first like real work week for the start of the year because we were out of town and like no production. I sat down with my guys and on Friday, I sent a message. I said, hey, think about anything that you think we can implement into the business that will make your life easier, my life easier, to where we can hit our goals for this year.
Mm-hmm.
And on Monday, we sat down, we had like a 30-minute conversation. I brought some donuts in, and I, in a sense, gave them ownership of their future per se. And it was like, well, I was caring about what they thought, and I implemented ideas that they had to where it's like, okay, well, this guy actually cares about me and how my work experience is going to go. And we're all trying to get to the same exact goal. Like the more successful the business is, the more successful they will be, the farther we'll grow.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I think that's something you see in a lot of startups is they might not get a huge salary at first, but they get equity in the business. So they feel like they're all working towards a common goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like they might go a year or two and not make a lot of money. But then next thing you know, these startups are making hundreds of millions of dollars and they have ownership.
A buyout
in
happens
that.
and an exit, and then yeah, that's huge. So going off kind of that, like you said, you got the opportunity to kind of sit down with your team, and so sit down with your team, talk goals, show them that you care about their future. So I guess let's talk about that. It's like, what have you guys learned over the last year about leadership or just being a good leader in general?
one of the big things for me, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, I had a guy that came in as our new market director this year, and the first thing that he said to us was, I'm not here to be your friend. And it's like one of those things where you hear that and you're like, oh man, like I want to be your friend. Like it just sounds like it'd be great. You're really smart. And then he's like, I'm here to show you how to run a successful organization and create wealth with this company. And then if we end up being friends, then cool. That'll be great. That was something big that I learned this year. And then also just having some consistency and some structure. My entire career has been a run fast and break shit kind of mentality. And it's like, yeah, we'd pick up new clients, and we were the top account openers year after year after year. But we weren't keeping those clients. Like as far as if you look at our net account growth, where what we lost versus what we brought on, it wasn't by any means super impressive. So kind of switch my mentality to figure out what systems and processes can we put in place to retain our current clients while bringing on new accounts at the same rate that we were before. So that's probably my biggest like takeaway from this past year and goal into this year is create more structure to help us grow more as an organization and have more people make more money.
Yep.
So I've kind of touched on both of this already. A lot of it's transparency, like in my business, and I'm sure all of ours, it's a very tight-knit group of people. And it's hard to separate friendship versus, working relationship. And what I've learned in the last year is the more transparent I can be with people, the better it is. Because all that does is whether it's something they have or something I have that's animosity, it just builds and builds and builds. And that's why I implemented this team meeting thing, which we've never ever done before, and it's going to be a monthly deal that we do going forward because it provides everybody an avenue to communicate. Where normally you might be afraid to have that conversation, it's more like, oh well, this is what's going on, this is where we can be better, and this is why I think that, and it's kind of more of a group setting, and the part of like having a little bit of stake in the game type deal, not necessarily like they get true ownership in the business, but they feel like they're doing something to improve the business.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so kind of going off what you're talking about, me and like my employees, we had a sit down. We had 2 sit downs. One was to talk about how they were going to go about setting their goals because none of them have actually had to set goals before. Maybe one of them has. And then from there, it was like, okay, we're all going to present our goals to each other. And it was the week between Christmas and New Year's. And it was really fucking cool because like I actually talked to them about personal goals. And I was like, I want you to throw out one personal goal whenever we go into this meeting. And so every person under me is a producer. So basically it's like you can tell what somebody's going to make by looking at their goal of what they want to bill is what we call it. Right. So, but we didn't actually put like, hey, I want to make this much money. But the cool thing about it was everybody's personal goal that they set out, if they hit their billing goal, that's going to help them achieve that goal, right? So to me, it just kind of felt cool to see them get excited about it because like one of them wants an investment property, wants to do the house hack deal. One of them wants to buy an engagement ring. One wants to do renovations on their house. One of the guys who just started with me like has worked a job, like paying a corporate job, paying shit for the longest time. And like just switched over to us and he's like, I'd like to quit door dashing on the side. Like I'd like to make enough money where I don't have to do that on the side and still live comfortably. So it's like now we tie it all back to like, okay, here's your annual goal, right? Which breaks down your quarterly goal, which breaks down your monthly goal. It's like, okay, then what are the daily activities we need to do to hit those? And to me, it was just like they were all fucking pumped about it. Like they all loved it. The culture's really taking shape. And like I know that if I can help them hit those billing goals, which there's systems, processes, training, all this shit that I know I can do. It's like, okay, I'm not just helping them hit financial goals. Like I'm helping them buy investment properties, helping afford engagement rate. Like, it's that's one of the things I didn't really think about whenever like I just kind of not fell into leadership, but I was like, oh shit, I got to hire people. That's like really underground, like probably one of the coolest feelings in the world.
Yeah, it's awesome to like help somebody reach their own goals.
Yeah.
And I heard something today that I even wasn't going to say anything. I was just going to start sending you guys an email, but it's something, I don't remember who it is. I'll have to look it up. It was on a podcast I just listened to with My First Million guys. And what this guy does is he will send an email at the end of every month that will outline the goals from the month before, and he'll say if he reached them. And he sends them to like his tight-knit group of people to where it's like, hey, I wanted to bill $50,000 this month or whatever it may be. And he'll be like, I didn't hit it. Or like, I wanted to start 75 hard. I didn't start it. And like, it's a full transparency thing. So it kind of gives that accountability.
Dude,
for.
I fucking love that.
Isn't it a great idea?
Yes.
And what he does is he just sits down and he goes through his iPhone and he looks at his pictures, say, so January 1st to January 31st. He goes through and he looks at everything he did that month. He just kind of gives everybody like almost like a blog or like, hey, this is what I did this month. And then, but he has his goals for the next month and then he like touches bases on what he had for the month before.
Dude, we should.
I love that.
Dude, bros in business.
Yeah,
we
it's a
should,
great idea.
like the consistent people, there should be groups of 4 or 5. And then at the beginning of the meeting, do whatever. And then like break out into your groups of 4 or 5 for like 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. And everybody go through all those goals with that group.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, that's what this group did for me is it pushed me to that like next level.
Oh, yeah.
And something like that is like, it's just going to push you even farther because you're sending it to, like I would send it to like probably like my parents, my wife, and, you guys, and then maybe a couple of people I consider mentors. And then I know some of them are going to be like, well, why the fuck didn't you do that? Like there was no excuse.
Dude, yes. And this group,
That's awesome.
100%. I want to keep like a document that like just like date marks every like little accomplishment that I have, but it's like just looking back since we started a year and a half ago. I didn't have any houses. I was renting. I have 2 houses. I didn't have any employees. I have 5 employees, right? 1 international one. How about that?
Look at that.
Yeah. Look at that. My
Penelope.
company is now international.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's 2 of us now.
If the Philippines
Filipino
count.
princess.
No, and that's cool. Like I think that's a really good idea, and I think we should steal that and call it something else.
Yes.
Yes,
Well,
100%.
The podcast he was on is Sam Parr, who's actually from
Yes.
St. Louis, who needs to come on. He does not do that.
Mhm.
But he's like, oh, that's such a great idea. I should steal that. And I'm like, well, fuck, how about we steal it first?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
100%.
we can make an app for it.
Stolen. If
Hell
you
yeah.
if
Let's
you're listening
go.
to this, you have any ideas of what we call it, let us know, and then we'll trademark it.
I love that idea.
So here's an interesting question that I like, and I think it almost always gets good stories. It's bad boss stories. Do you guys have any stories? Brad, I know you have at least one, or not really a bad boss story, but I know you have at least one from like high school. But do you guys have any bad boss stories that you want to share?
Yeah, I had this dude. So my job before Aflac, I was working for this janitorial company, and this guy who hired me was this shoot first, ask questions later kind of guy. And working in the janitorial industry, it was always like, you didn't know what the fuck was going on in the building. Like I couldn't control exactly every single one of my like 45 employees that were running around the place. And this guy would like, you would not believe the money that was spent on quote unquote team building, where it was just Vegas bombs, dinners, like Cardinals games, Blues games, like vacation, shit like that. So he would do that all the time everywhere that we went out. And then as soon as we would do that shit, he would like report it, and we would get in trouble for it. And he was just like, he was the biggest fucking hypocrite ever. And we had some really fucking fun times.
Right.
There's no doubt about it.
He was just a nerd, and he didn't like being left out.
He was 100% a nerd.
Yeah.
Actually, I think you might know him. I won't say his name on this. Have we talked about this before?
Yeah.
Yeah, fucking nerd
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, so he's just one of those guys, and he, I don't know, that was probably one of my worst like leadership experiences. But yeah, that dude sucks.
Mm-hmm. Brad?
I feel like I really don't have like a bad.
I was just talking about the time you got fired from that grocery store.
Oh, it's just a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Share with the class.
So I was the race I was actually just at. It's like our biggest race of the year, no, I take that back. No, we used to always race on Thanksgiving Day. Okay, so I was like, hey, like, I'm not gonna be here, around Thanksgiving and stuff. They're like, oh, you can't take off that week. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I quit then. And she's like, well, you can't quit. I'm like, okay. So I like went back to like bagging groceries, and this lady came up and I had to get fired. So I basically just said, plastic or paper, bitch. And I was just told to go home, and I never got rehired. So that was it.
That's awesome.
And that's when you realized you were unemployable.
Yeah, that was it right then. Yeah. So
That's a great story.
That's amazing. So my first job, which was fucking like taught me so much, I was slanging alarm systems. I was making like 100 calls a day. And there's this guy who was like, they called him like the president of the company. So he didn't own it, but he was like basically ran the day-to-day for the most part. And he was 6'1", probably like 230, just like a shit brick house. Like he was a kickboxer. Like the dude was, and also like
a shit brick house.
Yeah, like he also like was an avid steroid user and was like pretty open about it. And I'm pretty sure one of the guys he hired was like selling him steroids like in the parking lot like once a month. So had himself a temper. And this guy would, I mean, you talk like boiler room shit. It's like this guy would like work his job and then literally at home like put his headphones in and listen to all the calls just to see what was going on, making sure people were following the process. And we'd have these Monday morning meetings, which I would come in always hungover. So like anxiety out of the fucking roof from the weekend. And somebody would get called out. And what he would do is he would find the shittiest sales call you could possibly imagine. And he would play it in front of the whole group.
Oh man.
And it was normally like one of the newer guys. Cause like I established myself pretty early on there and he stopped fucking with me. But like, so he would get one of the new guys and there'd be like a new guy. I could remember a new guy was like trembling in his call. And he was so like, cause he was fucking nervous. And he'd be like, the fuck do you call that, pussy? Like in front of everybody. And yeah, I just remember like there was just so many instances. Like everybody would like he threatened to fire everyone multiple times. Again, authority, not influence. One time he came by my desk because he heard me not follow like the process or whatever, which I probably didn't. But I was like, fuck it. I was like, John, he wasn't gonna buy anyway. I was like, that dude was out. And he literally kicked my shaker bottle across, like punted it across the room and hit someone in accounting in the head. Like it smoked her.
Jesus.
Yeah. And so so finally it was like and I was just like, whatever, I'm making fucking good money. You know what I mean? This is like, I was just bartending, right? Before that, I was like, fuck it, I'll take this, whatever. I'll take this abuse, I guess, because I didn't know any better. And finally I was like on the verge of finding a new job and they were like, hey, we're gonna cut all your commissions by 75%.
Oh,
like 75%. So I was used
fair
to,
number.
at that time, I was used to making like $7,500 a month in commission alone. You know what I mean? So it's like I went down to like $2K and I was literally making $12 an hour outside of that.
Jeez.
Like hourly. Yeah. And so I had already been looking. And so somebody overheard us kind of talking shit the night before about our commissions. And they like pulled me in the office, CEO, COO, who was his wife, and then like the sales manager whose dad owned the company. So no weird shit whatsoever going on there. But I had brought in all these leads. Anyway, they like sat me down and they were like, hey, we heard you were talking shit. I was like, yeah, you're fucking with my money. Like you literally have told us like one thing you do as salespeople is don't fuck with their money and cap their commissions. And they're like, well, I think you're just toxic for this workplace and we got to let you go. And I was already in the final interview stages of a couple places. So I was just like, honestly, I was like, guys, I appreciate everything. Like, I appreciate the opportunity that you've given me. I've learned a lot, right? So, yeah, thanks for everything. And
they're like,
he looked at me. He goes, there was like a dead pause. It was awkward. They all looked at each other for a second. And John, the president or whatever, goes, who the fuck do you think you are? And I was like, what? He's like, you think this company's going to fucking skip a beat without you? Like, on and on and on, went on this rant. And at the end of it, I was going to say something smart ass, but he would have whooped my fucking ass. And so I was just like, all right, guys, thanks for your time. I'm going to head out. And that was it. Oh.
What's he doing now?
So 4 years later, I talked to a guy that like still runs it and the company's doing really well. But 4 years later, they caught him embezzling money out of the company and trying to start a competing company. So he was on the run. Yeah. He was on the run from the cops for a little bit.
Oh, wow.
Oh my Lord.
Real winner.
Yes. Yeah. Best boss I ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Sal,
Well,
you got
so
any?
for me,
Rich, we want to hear yours too.
I think it's not as crazy as you guys' first jobs, but it was my first job ever. It was like at a retirement home. And we had I worked at the dining hall services. We had 3 different supervisors. One was pretty mellow, like he worked well with the rest of us. And then one was like super weird, like cracks jokes and stuff. And then there's one that was like such a hard ass. Like she didn't care about anyone. She just like does her thing and like delegates and like uses her authority over people.
Yep.
I was like probably like the person who should have gotten fired because like my first 2 days at this job, I was like they had this old food court line, and like at the end of the day I had to like clean underneath it. So I was like pulled it out to like clean underneath the floor, but there was like a metal outlet box, and like and then the food cart line had this little metal stick hanging out that hit the metal outlet box and then like exploded. I was like, oh shit, like I'm like, am I getting fired? Nope, didn't get fired. And then worked there for 2 years. It was my sophomore year of college, and like I only worked weekends while I was in college. So like I took 1 weekend off just to get everything started, get ready for sophomore year of college. And then all of a sudden, like I was supposed to work that following weekend. They removed my name, didn't give me any like heads up that this person like released me. The one with the authority, like the one that hated every coworker and stuff. She just like cut a bunch of like employees and doesn't like give us a warning or give us a heads up. So like every week I'm on calling, I'm like, hey, like am I scheduled to work today? For like 2 months, they're like, no, you're not scheduled to work. Next thing you know, like, oh, your name's off the chart for like the list. I'm like, no one gave me like a heads up about it.
You got fired without even knowing it.
Right. But it's just like,
how you gonna get fired on your day off?
Well, no, it's like, like, were you let go or like, did I get fired? Like, I don't, like, they didn't give me any like reasoning. What was the reasoning, you know?
Right.
So that was the worst job experience I had, but
bitches.
It's nothing compared to your guys' situation, but
that's a good one.
It does suck.
So we're coming up on time here, so I'm gonna ask one more question, then we got the OnlyFans inquiry. So of everything that we've kind of gone through, it's like, what's your biggest focus as a leader going into 2022?
Mine's going to be just taking responsibility, just because I feel like I'm in charge of everything. So it's like, and I feel like I've done pretty well of that to start the year. Like if there's been something that's been an issue, whether it was technically my fault or not, it is. It's always my fault. Like I'm in charge of everything that happens underneath the roof, everything that ships out. Like I'm responsible for it. It's my name on it. It's nobody else's name. So mine's just responsibility. But at the same time, it's going to be to instill responsibility into my employees as well, to have like the same, like, I fucking love this place type mantra.
Right.
So
yeah, that's good. Mine is clear roadblocks. That's it. Clear roadblocks. I've also realized like where a lot of my strengths lie. So there's a book called The Big Leap that I'm learning about and I'm kind of reading. There's 4 zones. It's zone of incompetence, zone of competence, zone of excellence, and zone of genius, right? Long of the short here is the zone of genius is things that you're really good at that you like doing. So I realized that like innovation and like problem solving, like for other people, is something that I like. So that's my big focus in 2022 is just finding out where their problems are and coming up with creative strategies on how we can get better at recruitment, which will overall give us an edge on our competition.
Love it. For me, so a little bit about what I talked about earlier is just the consistency and a structure. One of the things that I've gotten significantly better at in 2021 was saying no to a lot of things, whereas before it was really easy for me to say yes. So like I will straight up just shut my door. If someone walks in, I'll tell them I don't have time right now. I'm in the middle of a project, and I have set times where I talk with people on my leadership team. If you want to talk about this, we can talk about this on our call, right? Instead of wasting time during the day. So that's a big thing for me. And then one last thing that I wanted to say on, I did read an article with Gary Vee where he was talking about some of what he thinks the 2 big characteristics are that leaders need to have, and it was empathy and kindness. So he said the best leaders have caring and empathetic personalities. So not everyone's going to agree with that. Most people think that that's like this soft, squishy, like easy thing to do is to be kind and have empathy toward your people. But he says in here that it requires discipline and confidence and enormous amounts of humility. So I think it comes down to like kind of like what you said, Brad, too, is taking that ownership of every single facet of your business, and then just making sure that your people feel like they're taken care of. So if I can do that and bring value to my people, then it'll be a successful year.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Well, so again, I think we're coming up on time, so I'm going to go ahead and jump to the OnlyFans inquiry where we'll all hop in and see if we can help. So this week's question comes from longtime listener Samantha. So Samantha says, let's say you have a manager that's not interested in your professional development and wants to take all the credit for any novel ideas, any strategies, and any contributions that you make. Also, the manager gets upset if you share things with the team and they don't come from him or her directly. So what Samantha is asking is, what's the best way to establish yourself as a leader within your organization without stepping on your manager's toes?
I think she should just step on his toes.
Fuck yeah. Agreed.
So, obviously that guy's not going anywhere. He's in a position of like, he's just a manager that can't lead if he's taking credit for everybody else's examples or, ideas. So I think that the people that are higher up than him will probably notice it a lot faster.
Right. Yeah. So I think there's a couple ways that you can go about it. Like I would say if there's an opportunity to sit down with this manager and just be like, hey, listen, like I want to help you. I also want to help this team. I'm trying to figure out the best way that I can do that because I feel like I have a lot of ideas for processes, improvements, and all this other stuff. To me, it's not like I would just assume based off how this question's worded, I'm sure that's happened or at least been attempted to happen. So then if that's the case, then yeah, I mean, you got to step on somebody's toes. It's either stepping on the manager's toes and kind of pissing them off, or it's stunting your own growth and devaluing yourself. So it's like I would continue doing what you're doing and share, help, implement, share all your strategies with your team and show your value, because eventually throughout your team and like your leader's leader, that's going to trickle up the more value that you can kind of bring.
This guy or gal or whatever clearly has the boss has an authority problem, right? They're wanting them all like the ideas and everything to run up through them so they can fucking take credit for them versus helping them grow. So I think this person, Samantha, needs to figure out, all right, what's the consequence of if I do step on this person's toes? Is it that bad? And if it is that bad and the people above them would agree with her boss, then it sounds like maybe you should find another organization to be a part of. But I think you just have to kind of take the bull by the horns, like Brad said. Fuck it, step on their toes, see what happens.
Oh, sorry. I also think it's a perfect example of like that guy was probably really good at the job she was doing, so they gave him the boss title of it. And then like when he had to actually lead the team, like he never could or still can't. Yeah. So now he probably feels like, oh shit, like look, Samantha's coming in. She's hot. She can do all these jobs way better than me. I don't know. Matt probably knows her.
You guys are so fucking inappropriate.
No, I'm just joking.
No, but what
I'm saying is she's coming out with these great ideas and he's trying to take credit for it. And it's like, oh, well, look, this girl's just came in here, a guy or whoever it may be, and they're already outshining me and he's feeling threatened by that.
I was going to say, anytime I've seen this situation where somebody is like, hey, come to me, like, let me present this, like, and whether it's like a smaller company or when I was at Purina, it was because that person kind of sucked at their job.
Yeah.
And it was because that person was exactly what you said. They were threatened by competition. They didn't want to see anybody under them outshine them. They wanted these people to do their jobs enough so they could get credit for it.
And what's crazy is like, I'm like the opposite way at work. Like I got this kid who's like way younger than me, but he's way smarter at certain things. And I just give him that, like, I'm just like, I fucking pump his tires like crazy. And I'm like, why am I like, yeah, I own the business. Yeah, I'm the boss. Yeah, I'm the leader. But it's like, why am I going to like compete per se? Like in a big situation like that, like why not like be the person who's cheering on all your workers? It's just going to make them want to work harder for you. And everybody's going to win.
Yes.
That's how it is.
Right. Again, you don't have anything to hide unless you fucking suck at your job or you're worried about people outshining you.
Exactly. And that leader should be excited that his team, if she's like on his team, is bringing these great ideas to the table. If anything, that should be a good reflection of your leadership and not some sort of threat to his job. And maybe he thinks that it's job security. But if, I don't know, that dude sounds like a bitch. So.
Exactly. All right. There you go, Samantha. Your boss is a bitch.
That's it.
And step on his fucking toes.
Yep. Okay, guys. I think that's it. Thanks for listening. If you get the opportunity, hit us on Instagram, like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff on Spotify. Also, next week, We've got a special guest, Sam Prim. If you are interested in real estate and building a real estate portfolio, whether it's a side business or a full-time business, you want to fucking listen to this episode. Sam's a G. He's got about 25 million right now in current rental properties. He flips over 100 properties a year, and his company's growing like crazy. So anyway,
he's got some storage facilities.
He's got storage
So I'm
facilities
gonna
too.
try and get him to fucking.
Brad's trying to get in on that for
That's
sure.
right.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So we appreciate you listening. We'll see you next week. Deuces.
Later.